By around 4000 BC, the marshy alluvium of southern Mesopotamia had already nurtured hut villages, but it was during the Uruk period, approximately around 4000 to 3000 BC, that Sumerian society took its first decisive leap into urban life. The name Uruk itself, later known in biblical texts as Erech, comes to stand for this entire transformation, from disparate farming hamlets to sprawling towns with tens of thousands of inhabitants. Two interlocking dynamics propelled this urban revolution. First, innovations in irrigation transformed the flood-prone plains into reliably productive wheat, barley, and date palm orchards. As canals and dikes multiplied, surplus grain could be stored and redistributed, allowing some families to specialize in non-agricultural crafts like pottery, weaving, and metalworking. Clay tokens, sealed in bully, evolved into the first pictographic writing around 3300 BC, enabling temple-administered granaries in Uruk and nearby Eridu to manage thousands of measure units of barley with unprecedented precision. Second, the burgeoning craft and trade economy fostered unprecedented concentrations of labor and authority. Around 3500 BC, Uruk's monumental temple complexes, dedicated to sky god Anu and moon god Nanna, rose in tiered mudbrick, dwarfing earlier communal shrines. These stepped platforms, called ziggurats, symbolized both religious devotion and centralized power. They housed not only priests but also scribes, managers, and storehouses for precious imports like copper from Oman and lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. Urban planning at Uruk displayed a striking complexity. Winding residential alleys gave way to broad processional avenues lined with workshops, marketplaces, and administrative buildings. Neighborhoods clustered around city gates, points of toll and customs control. Artisans pounded copper into tools and jewelry. Potters spun the first mass-produced bevel rim bowls, which have since been unearthed across the Fertile Crescent as markers of Uruk's far-flung trade networks. Yet life in these early cities was not idyllic. Social stratification emerged alongside growing inequality. Elite overseers enjoyed temple-controlled rations, while laborers toiled on canal maintenance and ziggurat construction. Competition for water rights occasionally sparked localized conflict, presaging the intercity warfare of later Sumerian dynasties. By 3100 BC, Uruk's explosive growth began to plateau as outlying colonies, Habubba Kabira in Syria and Susa in Elam, claimed Uruk's cultural mantle even beyond Mesopotamia's rivers. But this period had already set the template. Temple economies, bureaucratic writing, monumental architecture, and the city itself as an engine of social, economic, and technological innovation. The Uruk legacy endured as the bedrock on which the remarkable saga of Sumerian civilization would unfold. By roughly 2900 BC, cities once ruled by temple councils began to crown their own secular leaders, launching what scholars call the early dynastic period. In Sumer's southern plain, Uruk, Ur, Lagash, and Kish each claimed primacy, their rulers styling themselves Lugal, which means great man or king. These nascent monarchs fused religious sanction with military prowess, marking a pivotal shift from communal governance to hereditary dynasties. In Lagash, Enannatum I fortified his city's walls and led campaigns against neighboring Umma over contested canal water rights, an early example of resource-driven conflict. His victory stele boldly depicts him trampling enemies before a divine assembly, emphasizing that kings served both earthly administration and heavenly mandate. Meanwhile in Ur, rulers like Mesopotamia erected lofty ziggurats and sponsored elaborate funerary offerings, signaling the growing link between royal funerals and the cult of ancestors. This era also saw the codification of royal titles and iconography. Figures like Enannatum of Lagash adopted grand epithets, King of Kish, Protector of Sumer, asserting supremacy beyond their home city. Cylinder seals, once simple administrative tools, evolved into personalized emblems bearing the king's name and divine symbols, used to authorize land grants, treaties, and temple endowments. Urban populations swelled as peasants flocked for protection, trade, and craft opportunity. Royal palaces and administrative archives sprang up, employing scribes to record grain distributions, military levies, and diplomatic exchanges. Yet dynastic competition remained fierce. Rival kings claimed victory in temple inscriptions, and shifting alliances turned Sumer into a mosaic of competing states. By 2350 BC, this competitive environment primed the region for a new challenger, Sargon of Akkad. whose career would test the limits of city-state sovereignty and usher in Mesopotamia's first empire. By the mid-3rd millennium BC, Sumer's city-states had transcended mere survival to enter a remarkable golden age. Fueled by economic surplus and bureaucratic sophistication, this era witnessed a burst of literary, legal, and artistic achievements that still resonate across millennia. At its heart lay the cuneiform tablet, a wedge-shaped script impressed on damp clay. Originally devised for accounting, by around 2500 BC, scribes were composing hymns to Inanna, Sumer's goddess of love and war, and reciting the exploits of legendary heroes. The earliest known literary masterpiece, the Instructions of Shuruppak, offered moral and practical advice, guiding sons on filial piety, conflict resolution, and agricultural best practices. Schools, known as adubas, in cities like Nippur and Umma, trained boys in the art of writing, mathematics, and temple ritual, forging a class of professional literati who preserved knowledge and chronicled history. Parallel to this intellectual efflorescence, Sumerian rulers codified law. The Stele of Ur-Nammu, approximately around 2100 BC, predates Hammurabi's code by centuries, detailing penalties for theft, assault, and breach of contract. These laws, inscribed in front of the great ziggurat at Ur, declared that justice emanated from the king under divine oversight. By ensuring consistent punishments and protecting property rights, such codes underpinned a stable commercial environment in which merchants could safely trade across Sumer and beyond. Art and architecture flourished too. Royal workshops produced exquisitely inlaid lapis lazuli jewelry, polished alabaster vessels, and copper tools. Temple complexes expanded to include libraries, hospitals, and festival courts, becoming centers not only of worship but of community life, hosting music, dance, and public feasts. Ziggurats soared ever higher as testaments to cosmic order, their terraces providing sacred stages for ritual drama that bound citizens to divine cycles of flood and harvest. This cultural renaissance also bred cosmopolitan exchange. Caravan routes carried Sumerian grain, textiles, and craft goods to the Indus Valley and the Iranian plateau. In return, exotic woods, precious metals, and gemstones enriched Sumer's material palette and inspired new artistic motifs. Through literacy, law, and lavish patronage, the Golden Age of Sumer laid foundational stones for Western civilization's concepts of governance, literature, and civic identity. Beneath the glitter of temples and tablets lay a landscape of shifting alliances, territorial contests, and intermittent warfare. Sumer's city-states, Ur, Uruk, Lagash, Kish, and Nippur, vied for supremacy, each seeking control over fertile fields, watercourses, and trade arteries. Political maneuvering and military might became intertwined, shaping the region's destiny. One of the earliest documented conflicts erupted between Lagash and Umma over a canal boundary. Around 2450 BC, King Enannatum of Lagash led a coalition of southern cities against Umma's forces, ultimately seizing disputed land and erecting the famed Stele of the Vultures, depicting captives torn apart by birds as a divine sanction of victory. Yet victory bred resentment. Umma would regather strength, and successive campaigns saw both sides endure costly stalemates. Diplomacy, however, was never far behind the sword. Kings sealed treaties with intermarriage, envoy exchanges, and shared religious festivals. The temple at Nippur, dedicated to Enlil, the king of the gods, served as neutral ground for oath-swearing, hosting ambassadors who recorded agreements on clay tablets. Such alliances could unite fractious city-states against outside threats. For instance, when Elamite incursions menaced Sumer's eastern flank, Lagash and Uruk temporarily set aside rivalries to fortify frontier posts. Military innovation also evolved. Early Sumerian armies combined conscripted foot soldiers wielding spears and wicker shields with chariot-style onager carts for rapid flanking. Siege ramps and battering ram contraptions appear in reliefs from Tal al-Yuhamer, hinting at increasingly sophisticated protocols of war. Walls, first constructed with simple mudbrick, then reinforced with timber and bitumen, testified to the constant pressure of aggression. These cyclical contests peaked as ambitious warlords sought hegemonic control. Lugal-Zaggisi of Umma, briefly united all Sumer before Ur's ruler, Ur-Nammu, rallied a new coalition to overthrow him, establishing the Third Dynasty of Ur at approximately around 2112 BC. Through this pattern of rivalry and alliance, Sumerian politics refined the art of statecraft, teaching lasting lessons about the delicate balance between competition and cooperation in the ancient world. By around 2334 BC, the vibrant tapestry of independent Sumerian city-states came under shock from the north. Sargon of Akkad, a formidable chieftain from the city of Akkad, launched a series of lightning campaigns that upended the existing order. Employing an early form of professional army, mobile, disciplined, and supported by logistical stockpiles, Sargon subdued Kish, Uruk, and Lagash in rapid succession, proclaiming himself king of Sumer and Akkad. The Akkadian juggernaut introduced new administrative efficiencies. Sargon installed loyal governors in each conquered city and standardized weights, measures, and even the royal title, forging a semblance of political unity from the Mediterranean marshes to the Zagros foothills. Yet the incorporation of diverse populations and regional loyalties soon strained his nascent empire. Although Sargonic inscriptions boast of 4/4 of the world under his sway, internal revolts, fanned by disenfranchised Sumerian elites, and challenges from distant Elam disrupted central control. After Sargon's death, his grandson Naram-Sin ascended and elevated himself to divine status, declaring himself a living god, an unprecedented claim in Mesopotamia. Monumental victory steles depict Naram-Sin trampling mountain tribes beneath sandals, yet they also hint at the empire's overreach. Supply lines stretched thin, uprisings flared in peripheral provinces, and the steady flow of tribute from Sumerian temples began to falter. Environmental factors intensified these political tremors. A series of failed crops, possibly linked to a desiccating climate or soil salinization from unwieldy irrigation, starved the tax base. By approximately 2150 BC, Elamite raiders exploited these weaknesses, sacking Akkad itself. The once mighty Sargonic hegemony fragmented, leaving city-states to reassert local governance or fall under Elamite or Gudian domination. In the crucible of conquest and collapse, Sumerians learned both the possibilities and perils of imperial integration, a lesson that would echo in later revivals. In the wake of Akkad's collapse, a Sumerian renaissance flickered back to life under Ur-Nammu, governor of Ur and self-styled king of Sumer and Akkad. Around 2112 BC, he founded the Third Dynasty of Ur, recasting himself as restorer of divine order and legitimizing his rule with the ancient mantle of Sumerian kingship. Ur-Nammu's reign inaugurated an era of concerted state building. He codified the earliest extant law code, preceding Hammurabi's by centuries, outlining penalties for theft, injury, and temple offenses, thus reinforcing social cohesion. A centralized bureaucracy emerged, staffed by scribes who filled monthly ration lists for thousands of temple workers, army levies, and palace functionaries. An intricate canal network, overseen by royal inspectors, ensured grain flowed reliably to urban granaries, fueling both markets and the state apparatus. Under Shulgi, Ur-Nammu's son and successor, the kingdom attained its zenith. Shulgi proclaimed divine honors for himself, revised the calendar to commemorate his ascension, and spearheaded a vast program of temple rebuilding across Nippur, Lagash, and Eridu. His reign was a golden age of literary production. Scribal schools thrived, producing hymn cycles to deified kings and scholarly commentaries on Omen texts. Yet beneath the facade of unity, centrifugal forces gathered momentum. Provincial governors, appointed by the court, began to carve out semi-autonomous fiefdoms, marrying local dynasties and veering from central directives. Despite its eventual fall, the Third Dynasty of Ur stands as Sumer's most coherent political revival, an ambitious experiment in legal codification, administrative centralization, and cultural patronage that bequeathed enduring models of governance to Mesopotamian successors. As the 3rd millennium BC drew to a close, the Fertile Crescent that once teemed with bustling ziggurats and crowded bazaars began its inexorable turn toward decline. Two factors combined to dim Sumerian civilization's once brilliant glow: shifting environmental conditions and the steady ingress of Amorite tribes. Centuries of intensive irrigation had gradually raised soil salinity across the southern alluvium. Crops yielded uneven harvests. Fields once fed by annual Nile-like floods from headwater tributaries now suffered waterlogging or salt buildup. Archaeobotanical studies reveal a marked decline in barley and date palm varieties, replaced by hardier but less productive strains. Faced with falling agricultural surplus, temple estates, long the bulwark of social and economic welfare, struggled to feed urban populations, fueling social unrest. Simultaneously, pastoral Amorite clans from the semi-arid northwest pressed into the delta. Initially entering as seasonal herders bound by treaties to supply livestock, they gradually settled into peripheral towns, intermarrying with local elites and establishing chieftaincies. Their decentralized, kin-based social structure contrasted sharply with the highly bureaucratized Sumerian city-states, offering a flexible model of governance that thrived amid agrarian uncertainty. Political fragmentation accompanied these demographic shifts. By around 2000 BC, city-states like Isin, Larsa, and Ishnana contested for regional supremacy, eclipsing Ur's weakened dynasty. Kings no longer claimed divine sanction from Enlil at Nippur, but invoked ancestral ties to local deities, signals that old pan-Sumerian identities were eroding. The final blow came when Hammurabi of Babylon, himself of Amorite lineage, capitalized on this fractured milieu. Through a combination of military conquest and strategic treaties, he absorbed the former Sumerian heartland into his burgeoning empire. The distinct city-state system that had nurtured Sumer's innovations yielded to a more centralized Babylonian monarchy. In the twilight of Sumer, the legacy of urbanism, law, and literature passed into new hands. Though the ziggurats slowly crumbled and cuneiform receded from daily use, Sumer's foundational contributions endured in the subsequent dynasties of Babylon, Assyria, and beyond, leaving an indelible imprint on the arc of human civilization. And so concludes our journey through the rise and fall of the Sumerian city-states, those pioneering metropolises that first wove the threads of writing, law, and urban life into the human story. From Uruk's first ziggurats to Ur's grand theocracy, the Sumerians taught us how to build cities, codify justice, and record our place under the heavens. Their legacy outlived canals choked by salt, dynasties toppled by conquest, and the very clay on which they wrote. Thank you for joining Ancient Odyssey on this deep dive into the world's earliest urban civilization. If you enjoyed uncovering Sumer's secrets, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and keep seeking history's hidden chapters.